Good afternoon. I'm here to provide an update on teacher bargaining and speak directly to students, families, and teachers. It has now been 2 weeks since the strike began and since students have been out of the classroom. And we've still not received a realistic and fair proposal from the Alberta Teachers Association that would work for students, teachers, and taxpayers. But we do not believe this strike can continue indefinitely. It's hurting students and families, and for that matter, teachers. Given this, yesterday, the Provincial Bargaining and Compensation Office wrote to the Alberta Teachers Association and formally requested an agreement to enter an enhanced mediation process. This process would have allowed students and teachers to return to the classroom starting Monday, while ATA, the Teacher Employers Bargaining Association, and a third-party mediator would work together to propose a recommended agreement. PBCO made this offer to the ATA because this strike is impacting students and families, and I'm very disappointed that the Alberta Teachers Association refused this offer. Government is trying to put kids, families, and teachers first and bring an end to this strike. The offer of enhanced mediation provided a clear path to ending it. Government's investment needs to be flexible and work for all 61 school divisions, and we want the same things as the ATA. More classrooms, more teachers, more pay for teachers, and more educational assistants. And that's why we are committed to improving the entire system. With the 12 to 17% raise that was recently rejected by ATA, teachers' salaries would have started at $70,916 and go up to $119,033. This would have made them the best paid teachers in Western Canada after provincial taxes. We offered to hire an additional 3,000 new teachers over the term of the contract, which would help alleviate classroom sizes on top of the $8.6 billion investment we made this year to build 130 schools. We also offered to hire 1,500 more educational assistants to support teachers and students each and every day in the classroom. All of this was rejected, as was the offer made yesterday that would have had everyone back in the classroom first thing Monday morning. The ATA's latest offer would have cost taxpayers an additional $2 billion on top of the $2.6 billion that we have already committed, a total of $4.6 billion. Our province is facing a $6.5 billion budget deficit this year, and we must continue to be responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. TEBA is ready and willing to continue negotiating, but the ATA needs to come back to the table with a deal that is grounded in reality. After about 3 weeks, a strike of this nature would reach the threshold of causing irreparable harm to our students' education. The ATA needs to do this for its members and for all students. If it refuses to do so, we will consider other options to bring this strike to an end. Did you have anything to say? Yeah. And I'll now turn it over to the Education Minister.
Well, thank you, Premier, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us here today. Like the Premier, I as well am deeply disappointed that union leaders have declined our proposal. We asked union leaders to let kids go back to school and bring in a third-party mediator to help us resolve this impasse. By rejecting our offer, students will continue to face the consequences of this strike with no clear path to getting them back. As Minister of Education and Childcare, my highest priority is always Alberta's children and their education. Every decision I make is guided by the principle of putting kids first. The ongoing absence from school is impacting the education of more than 700,000 students across our province. Our offer provided a fair and collaborative process, one that respects teachers and focuses on resolving key issues through enhanced mediation. Instead, the uncertainty continues, placing even more stress on students and families. Students have missed out on valuable learning, sports activities, personal development, social interaction, and more. These kids have already been through enough with COVID, and keeping them out of the school again hurts them even more. I want to take a moment as well to speak directly to our teachers. We hear you. I hear you. And we know more must be done. And we agree with you and want to work with you. But our children should not be put in the middle of this. We are ready to hire more teachers to help bring down class sizes. We are ready to hire more EAs to ensure students receive more specialized supports. We are ready to combat violence and aggression in the classroom because no teacher should be punched, kicked, or assaulted. We are ready to build more schools to deal with the sudden and dramatic increase of students. And again, I want to say a thank you to all of our teachers. I know that you put your heart and soul into your jobs, and Alberta's government values and respects the work that you do. Teachers are the heart of our education system. Your voices matter, and your insights are essential as we work together to strengthen Alberta schools. Now, despite union leadership's rejection of our plan to get kids back into the classroom, our commitment remains unwavering, and we want Alberta's children to be in school, learning, and growing every day. Their education and well-being are at the heart of everything we do, and next steps will be focused on getting kids back into the classroom as soon as possible. In closing, I call on union leaders to make the right decision and get our kids back into the classroom where they belong. I'm confident that with the assistance of a third-party mediator, we can reach an amicable resolution to the current impasse and avoid further harm to our kids. Thank you, and I'm now happy to pass things over to Sam Blackett to moderate today's Q&A.
Thank you. We'll now start our media Q&A portion. We are running tight on time today, so a reminder to keep it to one question, one follow-up, and please state your name and outlet before asking your question. We'll start off here in the room before making our way to the phones. Go ahead first with the mic.
Edward from City News. My question's for the Premier. Premier, regarding the letter the province sent the ATA asking them to return back to work, the ATA says they will not go back to work Monday and will continue striking. They also called TIBA's request to take off the table classroom ratios in the enhanced round of bargaining, undermining any resolution for a solution. What is your reaction to the ATA still saying they will continue to strike, and why has the province removed the discussion of classroom ratios in the enhanced round of bargaining?
Well, I think, unfortunately, the ATA is fixated on a single solution, and that's part of the problem that we have. There are lots of ways to deal with classroom complexity, and there are many jurisdictions that have gone to court to make sure that they do not give up that flexibility, because some of the solution might indeed be smaller class sizes. Some of it might be hiring more education assistants. Some of it might be what they have in Saskatchewan, which has proven very successful, is having dedicated specialized teams that pull kids out of the classroom to work with them one-on-one. So I would say that the AT, unfortunately, has fixated on a solution which hasn't worked in the past. I know that there was $2 billion that was spent under the NDP to try to reduce class sizes, and year after year after year, the class sizes went up. And so that's something that we have to be mindful of, is that there doesn't seem to be an agreement on even how to calculate it. If you look at the number of teachers that we have, 51,000 and 740,000 students, that would be a pupil-teacher ratio of about 14. If you just focus in on the 35,162 teachers that they say are full-time teachers and divide that by that number, that's 21 to 1. So it seems to me like if we're doing the math, then we're already there. So I think that's why it's problematic to try to have hard caps and arbitrary formulas written into contracts. Let's work together on what we know is the solution, which is how do we deal with complexity? And we have to be able to have the flexibility to do that. So that's what we're asking them to do. Come back to the table. Let's work together on how we address those issues of complexity. But the idea of giving up some of that flexibility is something that we have heard from the 61 school boards that are involved in this negotiation, that they're simply not prepared to do that.
And then on back-to-work legislation, the legislature, I believe, is reconvening on the 27th. If the strike continues, would that be the government's first piece of legislation to essentially have the teachers go back to work? And if not, how many days would pass before the province would move in that direction?
If we get to October 27th without kids returning to the classroom, that, in the view of my education minister and others we've consulted with, would constitute irreparable harm to children, especially those who are trying to do the preparation that they need to prepare for university and be able to write diploma exams. So I would say that if we do not get back to the table next week with the students returning to classroom, you should fully expect that there'll be legislation in the week of October 27th.
Premier Carrie Tate from the Globe and Mail. I have a question about the Wyant report this morning. It noted that you had received briefing notes advising against the original acetaminophen ibuprofen deal. There were problems with both the original contract and the subsequent acetaminophen IV deal. I'm wondering if you can explain to us what your government is doing now in the future to get the roughly $50 million that the Wyant report tagged as money that's outstanding?
Well, I hope in your reporting you point out that it's AHS decision makers who have been responsible for the contract negotiations and will be responsible for any settlement, because the Wyant report made it very clear that there was no wrongdoing on the part of elected officials, any of their staff, or any of the public servants who were involved in this. What they did indicate is that AHS decision makers had practices and policies they weren't following, and that it wasn't working. And in fact, it vindicates our decision to move the procurement function into Acute Care Alberta, which is what we're going to do. And so for future contracts, that will be negotiated through Acute Care Alberta, and AHS will no longer have the authority to do that. As for the issue of the outstanding amount owed, either in the form of medication, which I understand AHS has been working with Health Canada to attempt to get a high dosage acetaminophen so that patients in hospital would not have to use opioids. So they've been working on that since November of, I believe, 2022, and it's still going through the process. So that's one avenue that they could go, or they could seek some reimbursement if the contract is not fulfilled. So that's, again, AHS wrote the contract. AHS is going to have to find the solution.
All right. In your answer, you blamed AHS. We've heard that for quite some
the
time.
judge did.
In this
The judge
period, the government was in control of AHS. It had installed an official administrator. You had signed off on the briefing note that indicated, go ahead and purchase this, and a ministerial order was issued. Do you carry any responsibility for what has happened?
Well, the judge says that it is perfectly legitimate for government officials to make policy decisions. And they also said it's not unusual for AHS to procure medications, that they do it all the time. They also noted that AHS has been signing charter surgical facility contracts going back to the 90s. So I would say that it's very clear from the report that AHS decision makers did not follow their own
Right, but
policies.
Premier, do you carry any
Do you
feel any responsibility for what has happened?
I think I'd encourage you.
Do you carry any responsibility at all?
I'd encourage you to read the report.
I've read the report. I'm just
then
wondering.
If I may, you'll see that through much of this decision making, there was a former premier. There was a leadership contest, and there was a by-election campaign going on. So I would say that is a pretty clear evidence that a lot of the problems with AHS decision-making were with AHS decision-makers and their staff. And I think that the judge's report makes that very, very clear when he indicates that no politician, their staff, or anyone working for the government of Alberta was responsible for any wrongdoing.
Okay, thanks, and we'll go to our next at the mic.
Hey, I want to go back to the teachers. I mean, it's no secret to anyone in this province right now that class size is the #1 sticking point for the ATA. So, I mean, there had to be some sort of, I guess, acknowledgement on your behalf or your government's behalf that this letter wasn't going to work without the class sizes. So you mentioned you're disappointed. Are you surprised that the ATA is saying no to that letter?
Well, I think that the ATA the leadership needs to understand that there's, what's the phrase, more than one way to peel a potato. That there is a way for us to be able to address the issues of complexity without having a one-size-fits-all approach. And I've offered many different observations about how that can be done. We could have specialized small classrooms. We could have more EAs. We could have dedicated EAs to the highest needs. We could have specialized learning environments with specialized teachers pulling kids who need the extra assistance out. There are lots of ways to address complexity without going to the type of policy that simply hasn't worked before. When I go back and look at the last class size reports, after the NDP was spending $2 billion, and go look at the Auditor General's report. It was the Auditor General who said this isn't working. $2 billion to reduce class sizes, and I believe they went from something like 18.2 up to 20.4 over that period. That is a very clear sign to me that these kinds of arbitrary ratios don't work, and there's probably a few reasons for that. Because if you look at the list of teachers, there's many that have been pulled out of the classroom, whether they're substitutes, they're assistant principals, they're vice principals, they're some kind of student leader, they're curriculum specialists and learning leaders, they're consultants, they're counselors, there's other learning support specialists. This is the problem that we have, is we have to make sure that the teachers are allocated to the classroom first. And so that is what my minister and I are going to be focusing on once we get to an agreement with the teachers, is we're going to be looking at why it is that with 51,000 certificated teaching staff, we still have and are hearing about class sizes that are unacceptably large. That, to me, suggests a management issue. And so I don't think that we solve that by having an arbitrary formula. We solve that by going in and finding out what the mix of staff is at an individual school and what the targeted approach is going to be for each of those schools.
I got one for you, Minister. The ATA has presented a couple different deals to its membership before, and the membership has soundly rejected those deals. So I'm just wondering, when you multiple times mention union leaders, it sounds like you're trying to villainize the union leaders here. Are you saying that they're to blame and the membership is not? Or are you saying that they carry the brunt of this work stoppage? What are you saying with that?
Well, I'm saying very clearly that we understand and recognize the concerns of everyday teachers, and we are listening very carefully to the needs of teachers and students and families. And we understand, as the Premier noted, that the key issue here has to do with complexity. And we've seen a 34% increase, as an example, in the number of refugee students in the past 4 years. We've seen double-digit increases in the number of students with English as an additional language. And whenever I talk to teachers, that's the primary concern that I hear about, has to do with complexity and how we manage that. Now, as the Premier said, there's many different approaches and ways in which we could address that, but we don't seem to hear those constructive proposals coming from the union leaders at the bargaining table. We do want to address classroom complexity, which manifests in aggression, which can manifest in violence. That's why I commissioned an action team on violence and aggression in June. We want to work at addressing those issues. And we don't have any concerns with our rank and file teachers and their desire to be able to provide the best possible support for our kids and to improve their learning. And we want to work together to achieve those goals. And we believe that by bringing in some enhanced mediation, we could bridge the divide, but apparently the union leaders don't want to entertain that.
Thanks, Tim. And we'll take one more from the mic and then go to the phones for a couple questions and try and come back here to the room. Go ahead.
Jason Markusoff, CBC News for the Premier, please. What do the findings of the Wyant report tell you about the rightness or wrongness of Athana Mentzelopoulos' concerns about the contracts before your government fired her?
Well, I can tell you that a lot of the revelations that we heard are news to us. And there are some good questions about why it is AHS decision makers and managers didn't flag some of these issues of conflict of interest, that they didn't flag some of the irregularities in the procurement processes. I mean, that they skipped steps, didn't even go to a lawyer on a $70 million contract. I can tell you we don't do that in government. In government, my Treasury Board president requires items to go before Treasury Board if they are $2 million or higher. Our ministers do not have the latitude to reprofile dollars that are higher than that. So we've got these kinds of rigid practices. We've got 12-year cooling off periods that we're very rigid about enforcing. And so what it tells me is that, yeah, AHS procurement was a bit of a mess, and that's the reason why we had to take it over from them. So that's why the future procurement decisions are going to be made through Acute Care Alberta.
You personally championed the purchase of the kids' Tylenol. Mm-hmm. Your minister directed the order of the purchase over your Ministry of Health's recommendations not to go through with this. Judge Wyant could not find from anything he looked at or tell from anybody he spoke to how much MH Care, the company run by Sam Maraish, made for each bottle, $14 bottle of Tylenol. Do you know the answer to that question, and do you care about the answer to that question?
I don't know the answer to that question. That's why it's alarming that AHS would write a contract where they don't have those kinds of details, why there's so many irregularities, and why it is we have to take over procurement from AHS, because they decision makers clearly made mistakes in this case. And so we're looking forward to implementing all of the judge's recommendations in our new procurement division. And I've charged DM Dale McPhee on doing that, as well as making sure that those same recommendations apply across all government procurement. Because I think what the judge indicated is that this was not unfamiliar work to ask an agency to do. Asking an agency to procure medicine is a fairly routine practice of AHS. Asking them to sign charter surgical center contracts is a fairly routine practice. But for some reason, the processes were not followed here, their own processes. And that was something that we're grateful for the judge for giving us some clear guidance on how to fix that.
What will you do, ma'am, to find out how much MH Care made about AHS?
Jason.
Will you tell that to people?
I can tell you that the judge is looking into that too. I think he's awaiting another report. RSM Canada, in his report, has been contracted to review the details and provide Judge Wyant a reconciliation of the numbers and detail the amount of product that is still in the possession of AHS. And then when that report is received, it'll be provided by government and it will be made public.
Perfect. We're going to go to the phones next here. Before that, just want to quickly clarify your comments there, Premier, on the cooling off period. I believe you meant 12-month cooling off period, not 12 years.
Oh, 12 months.
Yeah.
Pardon me. That'd be a long time for a cooling off period. 12-month cooling off period.
So we'll go to the phones next here. Operator, could you put through our next caller, please?
We have a question from Rahim Mohammed from Post Media. Your line is open.
Hello, this question is for the Premier. So over the weekend, the Chinese ambassador said pretty clearly that China would be willing to drop tariffs on canola and other agricultural products in return for Canada dropping the 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles. Since then, we've seen, I'd say, a predictable pattern with you and the other Western premiers jumping at the idea and Doug Ford over in Ontario looking to stonewall. Is there kind of a Team Canada compromise that you can envision for this impasse, or is it another situation where we're likely to see the West get the short end of the stick?
Well, I'm very sympathetic to what Doug is experiencing in Ontario. Not only is he most impacted by auto sector and steel, he's also impacted by steel. That's part of the reason I signed an MOU with Ontario that we would prioritize buying our fleet vehicles from the list of cars that are finished in Canada, mostly in Ontario. And I would encourage others to do the same. Ontario produces, I believe, about 1.2 million vehicles. And many of them are not only all the way from heavy-duty trucks all the way down to hybrid vehicles as well. So that's our commitment. And I think that that's the kind of cooperation that more and more premiers are going to have to do, is if we're going to see a fewer number of finished cars in Ontario headed to the U.S., then we should look at changing our own purchasing practice so that we can support each other. When it comes to the retaliation on China on cars, I think it kind of misses the point. I think that what the Americans are concerned about is Chinese steel coming into the Canadian and Mexican market and being dumped into the U.S. I could be wrong, but I don't even think that this is a real priority for the Americans. I think that the issue around the EV tax may have been done at the time to try to provide some kind of pathway to a resolution with the U.S. president. I don't think I've ever heard the U.S. president raise that. So all it's doing right now is harming Western Canadian farmers, and it's not even protecting Doug's industry because they don't have an electric vehicle industry. So it's a bit of a phony war that we've put in place 100% tariff on an industry that doesn't exist, and meanwhile the industries that do exist are getting punished. So I think there's other ways that we can help out the Ontario auto sector, but it's pretty clear to me that 100% tariff on EVs isn't the way to do it. I was in fact at a room, and I'm going to probably ask this in every room that I'm in. If there was no tariff on electric vehicles coming from China, how many of you would buy an electric vehicle from China? And I get 0 hands being raised in the room everywhere I go. So if there is some notion that there's a whole pile of Canadians just waiting to displace Ontario's cars so that they can buy Chinese electric vehicles, I just don't think that's true.
And an unrelated follow-up, I wanted to get your thoughts on the Conservative Party leader, Pierre Poilievre's recent comments on the RCMP's handling or mishandling of SNC-Lavalin and other Trudeau-era scandals involving the federal Liberals. He went so far as to call their handling despicable and suggested they were involved in covering up some Liberal misdeeds. Are these sentiments that you yourself would echo from what you know of the situation? And do you have similar concerns about political bias on the part of the RCMP that would make it more imperative for Alberta to move to a provincial police service?
Well, I don't have an opinion on the first, but what I will say on the second is that we have a contract with the RCMP that they are not fulfilling. They are supposed to provide us with 1,911 officers, and they routinely do not. We routinely have 400 or more officers that are vacant in detachments. We have detachments that sometimes have no officer on call, and we don't see any path forward for how that's going to be remedied. In addition to that, we also see that the federal government issued a white paper in March saying that they want to remove RCMP from community policing. So when we take all of that together, I would say that we are very supportive of the RCMP moving to a federal policing role, and that that's part of the reason why we're preparing our sheriffs to be able to take over on a variety of different policing functions where there are holes. We've already seen that we've had to. We've had our sheriffs have had to develop their scan team, which shuts down drug houses. We've got a surveillance team. We've got a fugitive apprehension team. We have a border security team. We've had them embedded in Calgary and Edmonton in doing frontline policing, and we'll continue to do more of that as long as we continue to see holes in the RCMP enforcement.
Thank you. We have time for a couple more questions. We'll take one more from the phones and then come back to the room. Operator, could you put through our next caller, please?
Next question is from Jack Farrer from the Canadian Press. Your line is open.
The first question for the Premier on the Wyant report. Can you explain why yourself, Minister LaGrange, and former Minister Copping, and even your Chief of Staff, Rob Anderson, weren't interviewed by the former judge for this investigation? Did you guys decline to be interviewed, or you just weren't asked?
I told everyone on my staff in my cabinet, as well as the public service, that I expected them to cooperate with Judge Wyant, and he had free rein to ask anyone he wished to for an interview. He could have interviewed any minister, political staff, aide staff, or anyone else that he saw fit. Obviously, those who no longer work for us, we were not able to ask them to do that. That was up to themselves. But he concluded that there was no evidence that there was any minister, political staff member, or member of the Alberta Public Service that acted improperly in this matter. And I can only presume that's why he did not make a request for interviews.
And then on the teacher strike, so it seems pretty clear to me that you guys are gearing up to table back to work legislation when, you said yesterday you were about to meet the definition of irreparable harm there. You need that to table this legislation. What is your level of confidence that back to work legislation would stand in the courts this time around after the previous order in 2002 was turned down by a judge?
Well, we'll be hoping that doesn't happen. I mean, this is part of the reason why we wrote the letter to the ATA, is we're committed to getting kids back in the classroom. But I would also say that we are also committed to making sure that kids are not harmed. And I think a press release went out today saying that we have had to make the difficult decision to make diploma exams optional so that no one is impacted in their final grades. There's a lot of kids who may choose to take those exams if they want to go on to university, and so we'll make that option available. But those are the kind of things that I'm talking about with irreparable harm. We don't want to be impacting the ability of kids to start planning for where they're going to go to university, and it starts impacting them as soon as grade 11 because you can get early admission into university. So we think that 3 weeks is about the limit of what students can handle before we start seeing irreparable harm, and that's why we're still hoping that we get teachers back in the classroom and that we can negotiate a settlement. That is by far preferable. But at the moment, we've had 2 negotiated settlements, both of them put to teachers, and they've been rejected. So we live in hope, but we're planning for the other option.
And we just have time for one more question today. We'll come back to the mic. Go ahead.
Just one question about the Wyant report again. If you're confident that there was no wrongdoing on behalf of you or any of your elected officials, will you now commit to a public inquiry to quell concerns of Albertans that are asking for one as well?
Well, we know what the problem was. The problem was bad practices at AHS Procurement, and we have already taken the steps to address that. We are turning Alberta Health Services into a service provider of hospital services. They've got lots of work on their hands to make sure that all of our hospitals are performing at the top level, and the contracting provision to charter surgical centres and procurement has moved to a secretariat, and the Acute Care Alberta will be in charge of that in future. So this confirmed, I think, the fact that we needed to move in this direction, that AHS had bad practices, that senior leadership was not enforcing their own policies, and it confirmed why it is we have to be more hands-on on this. So I feel like we have the information that we need to be able to correct the issues.
So just to confirm, this Wyant report as well as the Auditor General report, those paired together, that's enough for you now in your government?
I don't want to prejudge the Auditor General's report. There may be more that we learn from that. I don't know the time frame for his report, but that will be another proof point. The point is we're not going to wait to implement the recommendations. I've already indicated to my head of the civil service, Dale McPhee, that I would like all 18 recommendations implemented and make sure that it's not just in this level of procurement, but we need this level of oversight across all departments that do procurement so that these kinds of bad management practices do not set in.
And that's all the time we have for questions
Thanks, everyone.
today. Thanks, everyone, for joining us.